Welcome back to another episode of Debunked, where we take all of those crazy rumors you find online and spend 20 minutes talking about the many, many ways they're wrong. With Chris Evans tweeting what seems to be his farewell to the MCU, thanking everyone who has worked on the film and has been a part of his journey over the last 8 years, many fans believe it's the end for Captain America and that his character will be killed off in Avengers Endgame. While that's completely understandable, we don't think Cap will be gone for good, and this theory that he'll die in Avengers 4 is about to get debunked. As fans anticipate Avengers Endgame, they're still reeling from the incredible events in Avengers Infinity War, when Thanos' finger snap of doom dusted half of all life in the universe. Captain America survived the decimation, along with the other 5 original Avengers, but many of our favorite heroes were gone in the blink of an eye. While all those who were lost in the devastation are expected to somehow come back in Avengers Endgame, rumors have been swirling about Captain America dying in the movie. Now, before we tell you why we think these rumors are a bunch of baloney and explain why we think Captain America is going to survive the events of Endgame, let's briefly go over the history of this incredibly popular superhero. Captain America was created by the legendary writer-slash-artist combo of Jack Kirby and Joe Simon for Timely Comics in 1941, before the United States had even entered World War II. His origin story has been retold time and time again, so we're sure you know it by now. It's not as popular as the Spider-Man origin story that literally everyone and their mom knows, but Cap's is a close second. Steve Rogers was a skinny but well-intentioned patriotic American who wanted to enlist to fight in the war, but the Army rejected him as 4F, unfit to serve. He was very frail, so the US military didn't have much of a use for him until he allowed himself to be subjected to scientific experiments that made him an example of the peak of human perfection. Captain America Comics #1, which featured Cap punching none other than Adolf Hitler in the face on the cover, sold over 1 million copies and was one of the best-selling books Timely, later called Marvel Comics, ever published. A lot of fans aren't aware of the fact that Captain America's popularity proved to be pretty controversial. Captain America co-creator Joe Simon later revealed that he and Jack Kirby received a number of threats from American Nazi sympathizers and non-interventionists who wanted to keep America out of the war. However, Captain America was so popular that Simon and Kirby were personally promised protection from New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia. Now that is something. Cap's comic book adventures were so popular they ran from 1941 to 1954 and had a total of 78 issues before ceasing publication. In fact, Captain America was such a popular character that he starred in his own movie in 1944, making him the first Marvel superhero to appear in movies, even hitting the silver screen before Superman in 1948. Then in 1964, after Timely Comics changed its name to Marvel and found publishing success with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, and the Mighty Thor, Marvel brought Captain America back to comics in the 4th issue of the Avengers. This is the famous story where the Avengers find Captain America in suspended animation, frozen in ice for many years, awakened into a world drastically different than it was at the end of World War II. Since then, Captain America has enjoyed success in several different media, from continuously published comic book adventures, a cartoon series in the 60s, a pair of TV movies in the 70s, a direct-to-video feature film in the 90s, and of course, Captain America has been a cornerstone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since Chris Evans stopped being the Human Torch and picked up the shield in Captain America: The First Avenger in 2011. A decision that we all desperately needed to see. Now, anyone who's ever seen any of the MCU movies knows how important Captain America is. He's been in all 3 Avengers movies so far, and will obviously be making another appearance in Avengers Endgame. Captain America is one of the central Avengers, and really functions as the leader of the group. Cap, more often than not, calls the shots, and serves as the rallying point and moral compass of the ragtag group of heroes. On top of starring in 3, soon to be 4 Avengers movies, Captain America has also starred in 3 of his own movies. It all started with the first Avenger before we got Winter Soldier and the later Civil War. In fact, Captain America Civil War was so full of other heroes besides Cap that it might as well have been an Avengers movie. We dare say no other hero has had as many guest heroes in his standalone movies as Cap, which just goes to show you how essential he is to the MCU. However, like we mentioned earlier back in October, when the principal photography for Avengers Endgame finished up, actor Chris Evans sent out this tweet that got over 1.4 million likes. Officially wrapped on Avengers 4. It was an emotional day to say the least. Playing this role over the last 8 years has been an honor. to everyone in front of the camera, behind the camera, and in the audience. Thank you for the memories. Eternally grateful. The fact that Chris Evans' contract was up for renewal at the end of Avengers Endgame has been well known, and well documented for some time. And many fans took this tweet to mean that Chris Evans would no longer play Captain America in any more MCU movies. In fact, many of these same fans took it a step further to somehow find an implication that Captain America was going to die, never be seen again at the end of Avengers Endgame. Well, we think this theory is a bunch of star-spangled hooey, and we're gonna make sure it gets well and truly debunked. Let's take a look at how we're certain Captain America will survive past Avengers Endgame, and continue to be a part of the MCU from Phase 4 onwards, which kicks off later in 2019. First of all, Captain America has had a very bad habit of dying and then coming back. In the comics, everyone just thought he was dead between the end of his comic book run in the 50s and his return to Marvel Comics in 1964. But of course, as we all know, he was a big red, white, and blue popsicle until he was found by the Avengers. In 1977, the landmark Korvac saga was featured in Avengers comics, culminating in issue 177, in which one dude in tennis shorts, a polo shirt, and a ton of superpowers not only laid waste to almost everyone who was ever an Avenger, but also the members of the team calling themselves Guardians of the Galaxy at the time. Korvac killed everyone else in the fight, including Captain America. However, in an attempt to prove he wasn't evil after murdering dozens of superheroes, Korvac simply resurrected everyone he killed. Yeah, it was the 70s, what can we say? During the popular Secret Wars comics in 1985, Cap was killed by popular villain Dr. Doom, and then resurrected in the next issue because, well, that's just how the Secret Wars worked. In 1995's Captain America number 443, Captain America learns that the super soldier formula that has been keeping him going for about 50 years is breaking down, and his heart will stop in 24 hours. So what does he do with the last day of his life? Of course, he has coffee with his arch enemies Crossbones and Badrock before he takes the dirt nap. As if that isn't already ridiculous enough, there's a funeral for Captain America and everything. But of course, since this is the comics, naturally he's not really dead. A couple issues later, Cap wakes up in some ice again and learns that someone stole his body moments before his death and saved him. Because it's a 90s Marvel comic, we eventually learn that the corpse thief was, of course, Red Skull, who now lives in a body cloned from Cap, so that once again, Red Skull's in Captain America's body, and they're equals in terms of skill and strength. The Red Skull has taken over Captain America's body so many times. He must really love walking around looking all handsome, being able to get all the girls he wants. That's probably hard to do when you're a Nazi with a deformed red face, huh? Most recently in the comics, in 2007's Captain America number 25, Captain America was so dead that his death was written up in the New York Times and Newsweek. In the real world. Our real world. See, at the end of Civil War, Captain America had been arrested, and hope was lost for the heroes who opposed the Registration Act. Fighting for his freedom, Cap ended up losing his life at the hands of someone who was very close to him. While in police custody, Captain America spots a laser sight on a cop and pushes him out of the way, getting shot in the back by Crossbones. As Cap falls, as one usually does after taking a bullet, a brainwashed Sharon Carter runs to his side, only to end up pulling her own gun and delivering the fatal shots to the patriotic hero in a betrayal that nobody, and we mean nobody, expected. Ever noble, the great Captain America gave his life in the process of saving another. It was quite fitting for Cap. Ultimately, his best friend Bucky ended up assuming the cowl and shield for a while, even after old soldier Steve Rogers came back to life. Heck, even Falcon took up the moniker of Captain America for a short time in the comics. How did Cap beat death this time? Well, it was later revealed that the gun Carter used to shoot Rogers didn't kill him, but froze him in space and time. Again! Boy, if we were Captain America, we would do everything we could to avoid being frozen. So, Captain America hasn't only faced death on more than one occasion, but he's found a way time and time again to recover from rigor mortis and stand proud as the symbol of America's ideals. Like a cat, it's safe to say Captain America has 9 lives, probably even more. While the MCU does tend to deviate from the comics at times, many of the best comic storylines and conventions do find their way into MCU movies in one way or another, even if they're not exactly like the comics. Infinity War is a perfect example of this. Anyway, we're convinced that just like in the comics, in the MCU, death is temporary, especially if you're a popular and well-merchandised superhero. We said before that Chris Evans kinda sorta said goodbye to the franchise that made him a star after wrapping up Avengers Endgame. We know that his contract was extended, so he could play Cap in the upcoming Avengers movie, but we also know he's been hinting for a while that he'd like to move along. In fact, Chris Evans is quoted as saying, "You want to get off the train before they push you off." This is a pretty strong indication that Chris Evans has no intention to return to the MCU as Captain America, and would like to take a bow as the Star-Spangled Avenger while he's still on top. We also know Evans has been interested in directing recently, and is interested in getting more time behind the camera than in front of it. Is he afraid of being typecast like George Reeves was typecast as Superman, or Clayton Moore was typecast as the Lone Ranger? If, in fact, Chris Evans is without a contract with Marvel Studios, it's very likely that fans will have to say goodbye to Chris Evans as Captain America in some way, shape, or form. One of the common threads in the stories we mentioned earlier where Cap dies is that when Cap appears to be dead, he's merely frozen or moved in time. Well, based on set photos and leaks from reliable sources, we know that there'll be a significant amount of time travel in Avengers Endgame. In fact, we were set up for time travel way back in the first Ant-Man movie when Hank Pym called the quantum realm
reality, where all concepts of time and space become irrelevant.
Meaning that the concept of linear time in the MCU is out the window. And with access to the quantum realm, the writers can drop characters in any place and any time to create new stories or retcon older ones. In addition, one of the gems in the Infinity Gauntlet is the Time Stone, which allows whoever has possession over it the ability to manipulate time. And on top of that, it has the ability to localize its manipulation. This means the Time Stone could change the time stream for the whole universe right down to one single person. So we know Chris Evans wants to be done playing Captain America, at least until he's financially persuaded to change his mind, of course. And we also know that it's possible for characters in the MCU to go back and forth in time now. So we think it's entirely possible for the writers to do what Captain America comic book writers have done for decades. Put him on ice, literally or metaphorically, so that if they ever need to bring him back for a story, they have the ability to do so. There are rumors that Cap will find himself back near the end of World War II, where he not only gets to revisit his long-lost agent Peggy Carter, but also experience his own personal Valhalla, punching Nazis in the throat for the rest of eternity. Frankly, we like this idea, because it opens up the possibility of a return to the World War II adventures of Cap from the first Avenger, and makes it possible for fans to see the Howling Commandos again, as well as provide a vehicle for the MCU to introduce some of the Golden Age characters like the Submariner, the original Invaders, or even give some more attention to the original Human Torch, who had a very brief cameo in the first Avenger. In fact, we think it would be very enjoyable to see Chris Evans as Captain America meet the Golden Age Human Torch, because, as you remember, Chris Evans also played the Johnny Storm Human Torch in a pair of Fantastic Four movies a few years before he picked up the shield. Nah, we think Chris Evans wants nothing to do with those Fantastic Four movies now. We really hope Disney can give those guys a proper movie that isn't the literal definition of mediocre. Let's also consider the Russo brothers. The dynamic directing duo not only directed the last two Avengers movies, but the last two Captain America movies as well. So they're pretty invested in the character. In an interview related to Infinity War, the Russo brothers said, "For us, this was a challenge of telling the story, but also completing the personal journey that we started as storytellers in Winter Soldier. So the story that began in Winter Soldier and that ends in Avengers 4, there's a very personal arc there for us. I think you'll understand our point of view as filmmakers and who we are as people when you watch all four of those movies together." In response to Chris Evans' farewell tweet, Joe Russo had this to say about it. "I think it was more emotional for Chris Evans than it was for us, mostly because he's not done yet. I don't want to explain what I mean, but audiences will soon understand. Clearly, Chris Evans isn't done being Captain America just yet, and the Russo brothers definitely have a plan in place for him. We'll just have to wait and see what it is." Now, if you consider all the appearances of Captain America in the MCU movies, you'll see the common denominator is that Cap is a man out of time. All those scenes where Cap doesn't get any jokes or references or mentions that so many of his old friends have passed away show this. So it'd make perfect sense that if the Avengers are time-hopping like an old Doctor Who episode, Captain America would choose to return to what he considers his own time. This could free up a comics-accurate storyline in the present day in which Bucky or the Falcon become the modern-day Captain America, leaving the Chris Evans Captain America to have more adventures in the 40s and 50s. This would be a very Russo brothers-like way to provide closure if Chris Evans wants to stop being Captain America and still keep the door open for Evans to return anytime he wants. All they'd have to do is teleport back to the 40s and bring them on back to the modern times. Sounds simple enough, as long as the time stone's in their possession. Give it up, Thanos. In addition, remember the Scarlet Witch in Age of Ultron? Okay, well, keep in mind that her powers, for the sake of the MCU movie, came from Hydra through the Mind Stone. Well, if you remember, in the movie, she made the Avengers all see visions. No, not that one, you guys. Come on! We mean visions of their future. Thor saw Asgard destroyed, and all the Asgardians in Valhalla. Iron Man saw defeat at the hands of a Chitauri invasion, and Cap, well, Cap got to go back and see Peggy. It brings a tear to our eye, but so far, all of these visions have come to pass. Except for Cap's. Aw, man. Now we're gonna start crying even harder! We know Peggy moved on while Cap was frozen for 70 years and had a family of her own. But you can't blame a guy for trying, can ya? Plus, if he does go back in time, maybe he'll finally be able to spend the rest of his life with Peggy, even if it's in an alternate universe. Another thing that makes us think that Cap's going to survive Avengers Endgame, but will probably not be a part of the regular timeline as we move forward, is the roadmap for what they're calling Phase 4 of the MCU. In this new direction, Marvel needs to move the focus onto newer MCU characters like Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Captain Marvel. That's not easy to do when you're standing next to such an iconic character as Captain America. Furthermore, we bet that Falcon gets the shield, and just like he did in the comics, takes over the mantle of Captain America. While former sidekick Bucky would be the logical choice, Marvel Studios seems to have doubled down on Bucky becoming the White Wolf. And he seems to be getting his own character arc that's absolutely nothing like the one he has in the comics. There's nothing wrong with that. We just don't see how Bucky's going to somehow make a U-turn to become Captain America. Falcon hasn't had a huge role in the MCU so far. He's one of Cap's closest allies, and the MCU just needs a Captain America, so he seems like the perfect solution. Even in the comics, during the 50s when Steve Rogers was stuck in an iceberg, there were other men who wore the Captain America uniform, and after Cap was shot, or outside the space-time or whatever, back in 2007, both Bucky and Falcon took over the shield and cowl until Steve recovered from being dead and got back into action. Finally, if Chris Evans has decided to pursue other opportunities and stop being Captain America, and if the MCU story has Evans' Cap dropped off in the past, it opens the door for Evans to return to the MCU in movies set in the current day, as well as in the World War II era. Killing off Captain America is, well, it's just too final for a star of Cap's magnitude in the MCU. Why not retain the possibility of Evans returning just in case? Of course, we'd love to see Cap return to the setting of the first part of the first Avenger, and battle Nazis again with some of the timely Golden Age heroes or the Howling Commandos. But that's just us. We loved all the World War I stuff in Wonder Woman, and really, can you think of any place better to see a Captain America story than in World War II? It's where Cap belongs. Literally. Superheroes in general are a product of that generation, and we're big fans of the Golden Age comics. Why not revisit the timeline that gave us some of the most iconic heroes of all time in a movie again? When you consider that the super soldier serum keeps Steve Rogers from aging at the same rate as the rest of us, he'll be in pretty solid youthful shape for quite a while. Not only could Cap go back to the 40s and fight Nazis, he could survive through the 50s and fight communists in the Korean War, or through the 60s to fight in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. We're suckers for retro superhero action, and we love the idea of revisiting history with Captain America. The thing is, Marvel is focused on moving the MCU narrative forward, and doesn't create many movies anymore that don't really have a say in the future of the MCU. This has us thinking that maybe Chris Evans can get his own Captain America show on Disney's streaming service, like Loki. We'd definitely pay to see that. While that would be great, these retro Cap movies could still have a say in current MCU movies. Let's be honest, the MCU loves to show how events in one movie affect things in other movies, and how things in the past set things in motion for the present and the future. Cap could trigger an event while, say, fighting a Soviet supervillain that presents a problem for the Phase 4 Avengers to solve in the 6th or 7th or 8th Avengers movie, but that's just our fan theory. The fact of the matter, and it's been proven time and time again, is that superheroes are completely immune to death. Yes, they die, but they keep coming back again and again. There's no reason to think that one of the most iconic and certainly one of the most popular Avengers would be gone from movie screens forever. There are only a handful of superheroes who are still a part of popular culture that got their start in the Golden Age. In the Marvel Comics universe, only Captain America, Namor the Submariner, and the original Human Torch have survived. Nobody really remembers Golden Age heroes like Hurricane, the Thin Man, Man, the Destroyer, or the Blazing Skull. If you just said, who? We don't blame you. But Captain America is as iconic as Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Generations of fans have enjoyed his adventures in comics, on television, and on film since the 40s. The popularity of Captain America may well keep the concept of Captain America alive in the MCU, even if the character played by Chris Evans has made his last appearance. But we don't think we've seen the last of Chris Evans or Captain America. What do you think? Will we see the last appearance of Chris Evans as Captain America when Avengers Endgame is released on April 26, 2019? Do you think the producers will actually kill off the Shield Slinger, one of their most popular characters? Let us know in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more debunked videos. Thanks for watching.